Hello, everybody. My name is Mariusz Skrobala. I'm a publicist and political activist from Poland. And today with me, a special guest from Florida in the United States, Mr. Stephen Clay McGehee. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Well, it's morning here anyway.
Yeah, it's 4 p.m. here in Poland. Thank you very much for having me and talking to me. It's a great honor and pleasure to have you here. And Mr. McGehee, you are a descendant of one of the most prominent families of the Old South in the United States. You have your own company, and you are a promoter of the idea of Southern agrarianism. We are going to talk about it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
You pretty much covered it there. I have for a number of years, had a software business. I write political campaign software, and I'm 70 years old, have 6 little ones that call me grandpa, and I spend a lot of time playing out in the garden and dealing with chickens and peach trees and that sort of thing, doing my best to make the most of a Southern agrarian lifestyle.
And as I mentioned before, you are a member of McGehee family. So at the beginning, I would like to talk about the history of your great family because it's a very interesting one. In the second part, we will talk briefly about the idea of Southern agrarianism as presented in this famous book, I'll Take My Stand, written by 12 Southerners, published in 1930. And what is very important, two of them, the famous writers Stark Young and Frank Lawrence Osley, were a member of your family because their mothers were from McGehee family, yeah?
Correct.
And in the third part, I would like to cover a topic of political situation in the United States and US South, as we are witnessing, let's say, a cultural war against the Southern people, and the radical left is trying to erase your heritage, your history, your identity. And in my opinion, the aim is to, if you erase the identity of certain people, you will erase also their political power. And that's what the leftists in the United States want, because Donald J. Trump is standing on their way, and also the US South is standing on their way to take total control of the country. We have the same problem here in Europe with the European Union, which is a body, in fact, built by former communists. The main manifesto that European Union was founded on, the Ventotene Manifesto, was written by Altiero Spinelli. He was a Bolshevik and a Trotskyist. So as your Senator Joseph McCarthy warned in the 1950s, the West is being infiltrated by the radical left, and we are witnessing it on a rise at the moment, yes?
Mm-hmm. It's happening all throughout the world, and there is a fundamental difference between the left and the right, and the left wants to destroy the right basically just wants to be left alone, and that's an eternal struggle, and I see uh, no reason that it will not continue. It always has, and it probably always will. There will always be people who uh, don't like, and I'm putting it mildly, the traditionalists, the culture of our people, and the concept of our people is something that's very important to me. And we may kick this around later on, but I have a personal motto, which is not for our time, but for all time, not for all people, but for our people. And the idea of our people, which is basically an expanded view of family, if you look at it as expanding concentric circles, that's very important to me.
Yes, but first we will start about the history, to talk about your history of your family. And from what I know, you are a descendant of MacGregor clan from Scotland. And in fact, McGehee family comes from McGregor clan.
That's correct. You had mentioned earlier, the history of how it of that connection, and that was the when the McGregors found themselves on the losing side of a war in Scotland. There was a proscription order which made it illegal for anyone to use the name McGregor, anyone to wear the McGregor tartan, anyone to have anything to do with the McGregors. And that was an early version of the attempts we see today in the South of trying to destroy one's heritage. They had a lot more power back then, so they could just say, either you bend to our will or we'll kill you. So they decided, some of my ancestors decided, well, it's perhaps better to move to America and start out fresh. So they came to America, but at that time there was still a price on the head of anyone using the name McGregor, so they changed it to McGehee. McGehee being the phonetic spelling of the Gaelic phrase "Children of the Mist." Children of the Mist was the nickname that was given to the McGregors for their. They were known for being able to attack their enemies and just disappear into the mist.
Yeah, I
So
have some
that's
precise
kind of where that came from.
information. I have some precise information here that your first ancestor in US was Thomas McGehee, who wrote Thomas McGehee, formerly James McGregor from the Old Country.
Mm-hmm.
And what is most important, his mother was Marion MacDonald, and she was a straight descendant of the King of Scotland, Robert the Bruce, which we all know from famous movie Braveheart by Mel Gibson, although we have to clarify that he was depicted there not as the historical true looked, because he was a great hero. In that movie, he's shown as a weak man. In fact, he gave Scotland independence, and he was equal hero to William Wallace. Yes.
Yes, it's Hollywood does their thing, and we just have to recognize that and take a look at real history.
But there's another movie, The Outlaw King. It has like few years. I think Chris Pine stars Robert the Bruce in it, and it's much more historically accurate. So I encourage anyone to watch it. It's a great movie, and a great story. Mr. McGehee, I have chosen three famous members of your family whose history is linked to the history of the Old South. First of them is John Charles McGehee, who was born in 1802 and he died in 1882. He was a judge in Florida, and he was a chairman of the convention when Florida decided to leave the Union at the eve of the Civil War. Something more about him, sir?
He was, well, I wish I knew more about him, but he's sort of a mystery. After being, his official title, I think, was president of the Florida Secession Convention. And shortly after that, he just sort of disappeared as far as any official records or anything that I could find. I'm still looking, but he made his appearance and in a very big way and then disappeared, apparently.
If we are talking about the Civil War, I have to mention one thing, because I think in Europe and in Poland, most of the people have no idea that the name Civil War was created by the historians from US North. And in the South, you call it the War for Southern Independence or the War between the states.
Also called the War of Northern Aggression, if you want to be even more in that vein. Yeah, technically, a civil war is two sides fighting for control of one government, and that's not what happened here. This was two sides decided, or one side saying, we really don't want to be a part of what you are anymore, or what you have become. And so we just want to withdraw. And the North said, hey, that's going to cost us tax revenue and power. So we all know the result of that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion about this war? How does people in the South look at it? And can we say that it was a war for the money and for the power, not so much for the slavery as it is presented today? Because from what I know, before the Civil War, the richest city in the United States, it was New Orleans, not New York. So can we say it was a war about the power and this
Oh,
slavery
yes.
thing?
Yes, and when you really look at it, that's what all wars are about. They're about money and power, and a small group of people wanting to have it all. And the war between the states was no different.
Uh, there was a great Southern writer and philosopher, Richard Malcolm Weaver, and he wrote the famous book Ideas Have Consequences. And I know that once he wrote that the US South was the last metaphysical civilization in the West. I think there was a huge difference in the way the people lived in the South. It was more agricultural civilization. The North started to become more uh, developed in a way of manufacturing and stuff like that. Yes.
Right. Yeah. The South was, and to a large extent still is, a very agrarian, at least in the overall scheme of things compared to the rest of the country. There's still if not a literal agricultural force, at the very least, it's built into the culture. Um, you still see Confederate flags flying. There's one, well, right behind me. There's one on a flagpole in our front yard, and you'll see them on bumper stickers, and it's still a very popular symbol throughout the South.
Because you consider yourself to be, or you did that in the past, to be a different nation, yeah?
Yes, yes, the South was a nation, in really in the truest sense of the word. Uh, Most of what we have now is just a country. It's not a nation. A nation is something that is an entity that is bound together by a common background, a people with a um, common ancestry, a common set of principles, a common, or typically a common religious and cultural background. We have none of that now. It's a collection of people. It's the myth of the great melting pot, and that's exactly what it was, is a myth.
Yeah,
It
but
was
if we
an
go back,
experiment that failed.
yes, maybe we are witnessing the end of this experiment. Yes, at the moment.
Perhaps.
But if we go back to the family of your family, one of the most famous members of your family was John Pelham, the famous artillery officer from the Civil War. His mother came from McGehee family. Yes, can you tell us
Yes,
a
his
little
mother was
more
McGee.
about him? I think he is well known in the United States for everyone who's interested in this history of the Civil War. Yes.
Yes, he was known as Lee's boy artillerist because he was not only very young. I can't remember. He was in early 20s when he was killed. Um, but his appearance, he looked like a little boy, and the that was at a point where the South needed heroes, and the Southern media uh, built him up, and I think legitimately so, as a hero to be that they could focus their attention on. And so when he died, that was a really big thing, bigger than it would have otherwise been. You know, in spite of his talent as an artillery officer.
And I think he died at the peak of his fame, yeah, at a very young age.
Yes, and he didn't die in a battle that he was assigned to. He There was a battle going on near where he was, and he got on his horse and headed toward the gunfire, and that cost him his life.
We can see the picture of John Pelham now, and another very famous man from your family is Edward McGehee. He was born in 1786 and he died in 1880. And he was the owner of famous plantation near Woodville in Mississippi called Bowling Green. And the most important thing that's very interesting for me personally is that he was a judge in Mississippi for some time. But after the Civil War, he created an organization, and the name of that organization was Mississippi Colonization Society. And the
Well,
aim of
actually, I think that was before the war, because that was in 1838 when that was first began. At least from what I've seen.
so it could be my mistake, but the aim of the organization was to send or allow the free slaves to go back to Africa. And we have mentioned, we need to mention in that context that Liberia, the country in Africa, was in fact created by free slaves from United States. Yes.
That's correct. In 1841, the Mississippi and Africa area was merged, or I'm not sure how the political things worked out, but it became part of Liberia at that point.
Can you say that he has foreseen the future? What kind of problems could there be if the structure of the Southern society would fall, and what to do with all those masses of slaves? Yes.
Yes, and I kind of see him as a version of Enoch Powell, who in the British statesman who warned of the same thing, and he was ignored, and we see the results in both Europe and America.
Yeah, he was the author of famous speech, "The Rivers of Blood."
Correct.
Although it's not surprising that a lot of slaves, free slaves, didn't go back to Africa because they were already born in America, so they didn't know that continent. Yes, so
Yes. Well,
it
and
didn't
actually, go ahead.
it didn't work out on the larger scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Another interesting part of that is, and I don't know whether there was a couple of organizations that were doing the same thing. So I don't know whether this applied to both of them or one of them or what. But when the freed slaves were sent over there, they basically copied the same system that they were used to. They they built plantations, and they enslaved neighboring tribes to just the same thing that they had been freed from. So it's human nature all the way around. We're as the Bible says, we're wicked in the end.
Yeah. And going a little bit back, from what I remember, John Pelham was a cousin of your great grandfather. Yes.
That's correct. That's correct. My great grandfather joined the Confederate artillery also. He was part of the Washington artillery, and he was captured at the Battle of Petersburg and spent the remainder of the war in a prison camp in Maryland.
And from what I know, there are two places in the US that have your name. It's McGehee Town in Arkansas and
Mm-hmm.
McGehee Mountain in Alabama. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the McGehee Mountain, I don't know whether that's an official on the maps or on all the maps names, or whether that's just a what is locally known as. It's a more of a, as I recall, it's been years since I've been there, but it's more of a very large hill or a small mountain. It's not any major imposing thing. And that's where the family cemetery is, um, and that's a we when that recently that the cemetery was cleaned up, and there was a bit of a ceremony that we had there, and we had planned to have some Confederate reenactors participate, but the weather was horrible, so that didn't happen. But we still very much recognized the Confederate ancestry and the role in our family history.
And what about that town in Arkansas?
Yeah, McGehee, Arkansas, founded by a McGehee, one of the McGehees. I don't remember which one right offhand, but they bought some property there. It began to develop. They built a post office, and when there's a post office, they have to have a name. So it became McGehee, the town of McGehee. And it just kind of developed from there. It's still there. It was a key railroad intersection or junction. I don't remember the exact criteria, but it was the railroads were a big part of that.
I think for anyone who wants to know more about your family, there's a lot of books, there's a lot of information in internet, even on Wikipedia. And there's also a huge genealogical work about your family, yes?
Yes, it's a 3-volume set, and I've got all 3 volumes, and I'm very privileged to have that kind of information already done. So it's other people, and my father was a big contributor to that, as well as one of my aunts, my Aunt Margaret. She was very much a genealogy student and collected a lot of information, and that was handed down to me. And now at our past family reunion earlier this month, I found one of my cousin's son approached me and said he would like to take on the role of maintaining the family records and artifacts and that sort of thing, old
That's great.
photos, that sort of thing.
That's great. Do you have one of those books with you? Could you
Yes.
show it?
This is the 3rd volume. Like I say, it's a 3-volume set, and they're pretty extensive. It goes into a lot of detail. And
So for anyone who wants to know more about your family and about your contribution to the history of the South and Civil War, there's a lot of information. And now we can talk about the idea of Southern agrarianism. You have your own website, southernagrarian.com.
that's
Why
correct.
is Southern agrarianism important for you?
It's an effort to reconnect with the soil that feeds us and clothes us, and you know, everything goes back to the soil, and we, in our increasingly industrialized technological world, that's missing, and it's something that is important, and I think it's a great loss to society, to our culture, uh, if we don't embrace that. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to say everybody needs to do this, or that you know, they're necessarily wrong and Southern agrarianism is necessarily right. My objective is to make that available, to remind people that it's there, remind people of their roots, and and provide a bit of inspiration, if you will, to carry on the simpler agrarian life.
I think that this what's important, that the Southern agrarians are one of only the few intellectuals in the 20th century that drew such an profound attention to this notion of going back to agriculture and how it's important for healthy society and healthy culture and civilization. We had a lot of books critical of the modern world, but usually they draw attention to some kind of ideological issues, yeah?
Hmm.
And they are very concrete. The life in the village, the life on the farm is the right way to do everything, yes?
Right, and it's also important to note that Southern agrarianism, or at least um, the focus that uh, the uh, that the book by the 12 Southerners uh, lays out, it doesn't say that, you know, industry is bad or wrong. It doesn't say that we shouldn't have doctors and lawyers and everything else that is other than a farmer. It just says that we need to appreciate agriculture. We need to uh, see it as an honorable and good thing in its own regard, rather than strictly an economic uh, piece of the puzzle. We don't want to become just a another cog in the machine of modern society. We want to be um, that simpler, more basic, um, embracing our roots, embracing our families, and you know, uh, it's just a simpler life, and simple is usually better.
And this idea of agrarian is what can it give to the modern world or the modern United States? You think it has something to offer?
I think it has a lot to offer to those who recognize it and say, "Hey, you know, we're missing something," and Southern agrarianism is represents what is missing. Um, there there will always be people who will scoff and mock it. That's okay. You know, they do whatever they want to do. We don't try to force it on anybody. We're not trying to um, say that this is the only way. This is the way we want to do it. And if you don't like it, too bad.
I think that there's a kind of movement now going on also in the United States of people wanting to move out from big cities and move to the countryside. They are moving to Idaho, they are trying to buy some farms.
Mhm.
Although I think it's not so easy for a common man because of the prices of the land and farms. It's not easy to go back to this way of living in the modern world, isn't it?
Yes, and that's true. It's um, my the way I look at it is you need to figure out what works for you. You know, someone who is living in a in or near a city, you don't have to have a farm. You don't have to have, masses of acres. Just a simple garden is enough to get things heading in the right direction. You can't. You've got to take little steps, and that it starts with something like as simple as a garden. I live on 1 acre, which is not a. I mean, it's fine for me. It's not a huge farm. Unlike many others, I had that opportunity. I inherited a 120-acre farm and could have moved there if I wanted to, but chose not to. I ended up selling that to my brother in order to keep it in the family. But it's not about having massive amounts of land and doing commercial farming. That's missing the point. It's
He's
about
still there? This
Mhm.
farm is still in the hands of your family?
Yes. That 120 acres plus the farm a different farm that my father was raised on, and that's still in the family. That's where we hold our annual family reunion. This was this past June, or a few weeks ago, was our 68th annual family reunion, which is very much a rarity today to have that regular family reunion.
That's great. That's great for you. Mr. McGehee, we can go now to the subject of politics of the US South. Please tell me what's going on. People are tearing down the monuments. The radical left are destroying great monuments of great Southern heroes. And they are not only heroes of the US South, they are heroes of the whole Western civilization because Robert E. Lee can be easily considered a role model for everyone, even in Europe. And this Black Lives Matters and radical left is just tearing down monuments. The federal government is doing nothing, although those monuments should be protected by the law. So what are we witnessing? This is cleansing of a culture and destruction of a Southern society, isn't it?
Yes, what we're witnessing is the very intentional destruction of traditionalism, of not just Southern, but throughout the entire country. The destruction of our history, of our people, our culture, and it's a when you tear down monuments, when you rename streets and buildings, and it's an Orwellian effort to erase all memories, all vestige of Southern, and well, it's broader than just Southern. It's a whole white European descended group of people, the people that founded America. It's an effort to erase our very existence. And when you see the lack of prosecution for those who
Mhm.
attack not just monuments, but attack people,
Mhm.
there's a good case that can be made that they're not only trying to destroy the memory of the white European descendants, both Southern, Northern, Western, everywhere, but literally destroy us. When the protection of the people is a fundamental task of government, and yet government is not doing that. So that says something, and it's not something good.
In my opinion, those people who do that are modern day barbarians. And we remember just some years ago, the Taliban in Afghanistan, they destroyed the ancient monuments of Buddha. The people destroying the monuments in the West, they have the same type of thinking and the same type of behavior. This is pure barbarity, what's going on.
Yes.
And we could imagine a situation like this. So-called white nationalists, it's a
Mhm.
notion created by media mostly. If they destroy a monument of, let's say, Malcolm X, I think all hell would break loose. The federal government of US would go crazy, CNN would go crazy, Whoopi Goldberg definitely would go crazy. But I see that they are allowed to do anything that they want, yeah?
Yes. Yeah, they can get away with anything, and a lot of that comes down to George Soros and his evil minions uh, putting prosecutors into position that they're going to do what he wants, and he wants them to destroy the white European culture and promote, well, I'm not really sure what he wants to promote, but he's all about destroying.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think
and
it's not only
uh,
Soros, but also corrupt politicians.
oh yes,
corrupt
yeah,
corrupt politicians from both sides now in the West, because in England the same thing happened, that some mob destroyed some historical monuments. The problem is with corrupt elites in the US and also in Europe, yeah.
they
And
they want to stay in
by
power.
doing that, yeah, and by doing that they show on what side they are standing on, yes.
Hmm. Yeah, they're and I think it's also important to note that it's not from our standpoint, from um, the uh, the southern standpoint, from the white European descendant standpoint. It's not an animosity toward blacks or other races. You know, they're in reality, they're just used as pawns in this game. They're used as the battering rams. They're the cannon fodder uh, to keep the politicians in power. Um, you know, I think I mentioned earlier my own motto, personal motto of not for our time, but for all time, not for all people, but for our people. The emphasis is on, for me, is on our people, but our people depends on who's saying it. I fully expect blacks and other races to have the same love for their own people, and so you know it's not a um, not against others. It's for our people. It's like Donald Trump's America First. Well, it's our people first. It's not against others, it's for our own.
Yeah. And as I said before, I don't know if you are going to agree with me. South is standing on the way of corrupt radical left elites who want to take total control of America and of Europe. We have the same problem in Europe.
Yes. Oh,
And
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, and if anyone knows anything about history of political ideas, you know, when Joe Biden is talking, Kamala Harris is talking, Governor Newsom, or I should call him Chairman Newsom, or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, or Rashida Tlaib, yeah, that's her name, I think. Uh, This is something that now they are calling liberalism or progressivism, but historically speaking, it's not even socialism anymore. It's neo-communism, neo-Marxism, neo-Trotskyism. Those are the same old ideas that we know from 20th century, that we know from Chairman Mao, from Lenin. It's all the same. If someone doesn't know the history of political ideas, he will not figure it out, and he will think it's something different. But for a man who knows the history, he knows that they are talking Karl Marx, in fact, yes?
Yes.
So,
And it's if you look at the division between socialism and communism, the only real difference is how it's put into effect. If socialism, at least the definitions that I understand, socialism is tries to get in through the legal system, and communism says no holds barred, violence, war, whatever it takes, and that's where we're headed. We're right on that dividing line, and heading very much toward the communism, when you have violence and riots and destruction, and that's pretty much the definition of it.
Yeah. Even I think worse than that, because the main future of communism is centralized government power. And I think the aim of all those radical leftists in government in the United States, but also in European Union, is to create a totalitarian state. Because if we have a state which controls your family, what you can and what you can't do with your children, it forces you to send them to public school, it forces you to buy health insurance. It implements a model of police state. It takes away your guns. It taxes you more than 50% every month. We are talking about the totalitarian state there. The state replaces God. The state is the judge. The state is the ultimate power. And I think we are heading in that direction everywhere in the West. Is it Poland or is it Brussels? Or is it United States at the moment?
I think it's the world. It's everywhere you look. It's they're making gains, and a lot of it I put I attribute to just basically laziness. Laziness to say that, look, you guys do whatever you want. As long as you're taking stuff from the other people and giving it to us, we'll keep voting for you. And that's in a nutshell how they get their power. They say, we will take from these other people, the so-called rich, which basically means the productive, and turn around and give it to the unproductive, as long as you keep voting for us. And that's where we are, I think.
And I said that what is happening in US South is an example what side are the authorities, most of the government, the so-called deep state standing on. And we can see that also when it comes to Charlottesville, yeah, where there was a lawfully registered manifestation attacked by the leftist mob. An accident, completely unnecessary, happened. A young lady died, and the whole media, the whole radical left complex attacked the political right, yeah, that stood to unite itself and stood in defense of the Robert E. Lee monument.
And a big factor in there is the fact that the police were told by the politicians to stand down, and they basically herded them into a trap, and so there's nothing spontaneous about it. It was very much a governmental decision or political decision to to let the leftist activists get away with whatever they wanted and attack and arrest those on the right.
The trials started, people had a lot of problems, it took a lot of money, a lot of stress, many years of their lives, of course, only from the right side of the political spectrum. And we remember, as Donald Trump said, there were fine people on both sides, and the media just went crazy when he said that, yeah?
Yeah, and another important part of it is, even if the people are found innocent by some stroke of luck, I suppose, it's often been said that the process is the punishment. The years of stress, the legal expenses,
Yeah.
the loss of jobs, loss of employment. Um, it takes a huge toll on somebody before they even go to court.
Mhm. But for me, it was one of the rare examples in the West of some group of people of white European descent coming into one place under one political idea to unite themselves and to defend something. In this
Mhm.
case, it was the Robert E. Lee Monument. Yes.
Yes.
So it's very rare now.
Well, and that is a big success from the leftist standpoint. They have
Mm-hmm.
made the price so high to start something like that that it's hard to get anybody to volunteer to step into that
Mm-hmm.
firestorm.
Mm-hmm. And they also atomized the society. People
Mhm.
prefer to drink beer, watch Netflix. They are losing their identity, so they don't know what to fight for or against. Yes.
They don't care
So,
anymore. Mhm.
but the cost for that will be slavery, new version of slavery.
True.
That's the only way it can develop.
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed completely.
So bad things are happening because all of that we were talking about are small parts of bigger whole, and the bigger whole is an open attack by evil forces of radical left, of neo-Marxism on the whole Western civilization, because we have quite the same problems in Poland. They have quite the same problems in Germany, in UK, as you have in United States. And in my opinion, it's an open attack on the Western civilization and the tradition that built our civilization. And that's why, as Donald Trump is standing in their way, as was said before, South is standing on their way. That's why they try to destroy your tradition, your culture, because you are more conservative, more religious, and still attached to those values. Today, I've read on Breitbart that Louisiana passed a law that the schools will have to hang somewhere 12 commandments. Yeah.
Yeah. The Ten Commandments.
Yes, excuse me. Of course. It's the Ten Commandments. So that's the right way to do it. And I think the leftists in New York are going crazy now about that. Yeah.
Good. Good. Let them.
Yeah, and they would go crazy in Poland if we do that as well. We have exactly the same problems, yeah? Because now the decision making, there are two decision making places in the West. It's Brussels and it's Washington, D.C. And a small group of leftist fanatics are deciding about everything, yeah? And that's a tragedy.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
All we can do is focus on that which we can change, and um, just hope and pray that goes in the right direction at some point.
And some people might ask, why are we having this conversation? There's such a big distance between us because I'm in Poland, that's Central Europe, you are in Florida. There's a big difference between us geographically, but also culturally. But we are all of European descent. The siblings of my great great grandmother, they went to United States before the Second World War. So we all come from Europe. We are all a part of what could be called the Western civilization. And we are, all of us of European descent people, we are in the same trouble. Will you agree with me? So we
Yes,
need to
sir.
cooperate, we need to know each other, we need to talk, and we need to fight against those evil forces that are destroying our culture and heritage.
Yes, sir. Agreed completely. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So for the young people, leave your houses, go to the streets, set up some political organizations, start reading good books about your history and the past, and do whatever you can to stop this madness that's going on in the Western world. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure and honor, Mr. McGehee. Thank you.
Thank you.